we can share all this information, but people get addicted, and it plays into all of the human emotions in both positive and negative ways. And it's still the virtues of like discipline that you have to use it in the right way. And then I also agree, tying it more into the Bitcoin, for AI to actually, for the algorithms to work, I think we need Bitcoin and the micropayments and the micro valuations to give human input. Like the biggest problem with the internet today, in my opinion, is the insidious nature of free, and how that incentivizes these algorithms to only, feed us or do outputs that get our attention. And then
it's one of the most dangerous things that I see about the current incarnations of these GPT clients is they are all free. And in the case of anything that is out there, if it is free, you are the product.
That plays to all the ills in the boxes as well. So we need to change the narrative and change the story the other way, so we can use it as a tool, for good.
What I like in using it is that it cleans up the screen. So when I have my younger children looking at it, we can get, say, a recipe or learn something without the little creepy advertisement boxes distracting us from every corner. It's just, it drives me nuts. Yeah, I know. So right now I'm going to use the hell out of it until it just gets corrupted.
Someone's got to release a paid version where it's, 0.1 of a cent per query or something like that, and ad free, and then perfect. That'd be great.
All right, Brendan, what are you doing?
I think Ty Everett's already built it. It on Bitcoin.
Has he? Well, that's good. That's interesting. I mean, I don't know enough about how to build that, like how to take what has been built and set it up and deploy it. I don't know if he's just sending the queries through to OpenAI or whoever runs it.
I don't really know either. I watched his video kind of over my head, but it seems like the concept is what he was trying to do.
Well, perfect. I think that's going to be the way it should go, or it's part of. I'm a big Microsoft user. I use Office. I use Windows. I can't stand Mac, and I'm a little bit excited that they're rolling it up into what do they call it, like an assistant type thing, because their current assistant is very shit, to put it lightly. So
I saw a video on YouTube that was saying that in December they're going to release ChatGPT 5, and they reckon, I mean, I've had quite a few conversations with people about this, but the thing I was watching is Google and Microsoft reckon that it's going to be AGI at ChatGPT 5, which will be out in December. Now, I know there's a lot of people that dispute this because they still, but I just find it interesting that there's this group of people that are really convinced that it's already at a point where it's going to be AGI by December, whereas there's another train of thought that actually it's just automated in intelligence.
It's a Turk. It's like an automaton. If you put this right input in, you get this output out.
But it's already, I think what they're saying is like Elon put make an AI, told the AI to make an AI, and the AI made an AI. So do you think they're getting, because they're so focused in on it, that they're just getting too excited about what's happening and getting so sucked into it that they're actually seeing things that aren't actually there at the moment? Because it's like,
absolutely.
So
I think Leslie's way of looking at it, where it's, hey, this is like a dishwasher, this is going to save me time, but it's not going to take the job away from me of being the creative agent in the projects that I'm doing. And I'm the one who still sets the direction. I'm the one who still kind of understands where it's going, and I'm using this as a tool to help me get there faster, rather than, like, I've seen a funny thread on Twitter where a guy basically told ChatGPT, I want you to come up with a job idea for me. I have $100.
Yes,
I'll
and
do whatever you tell me to do.
he's made
And
profit from it already, hasn't he? Well, is it because I have this completely different view because I'm coming from a creative industries background, right? So voiceover, it's already taken over voiceover jobs for actors. It's already taken over artist jobs for artists. It's already taken over animator jobs for animators. It's already taken over video editing jobs for video editors. So it is a tool, but it's also a tool that is so disruptive to certain industries that it's actually really scary. And this, when I was having this conversation with Ava, she was saying it's 0 years old at the moment. And I know I've said this before in a couple of interviews that I've done, but if it's 0 years old at the moment and it's already so disruptive to that particular industry, and it is causing a lot. I mean, like for example, Real Engine 5, where they do where they do the motion capture, like, well, it used to take weeks, 6 weeks or something to do proper motion capture. Literally now you can look into the phone, 30 seconds worth of you speaking as the actress, then give it a minute and a half, and it's literally turned you into a complete 3D animated speaking, full rigged, like so amazing graphics. It's so real, like it's just unbelievable. So, and these are, so for that industry, it is really disrupting and it's taking away jobs from people. And that's where I myself don't see it as a tool. I see it as something that's just taking over. Yes, it is a tool in a sense, but it's also like it's taking jobs away from people, which like really desperately, we're already struggling to get jobs anyway, if that makes sense. So what do they do to replace that? Because creativity is something you can't, if you're a creative mind, you can't just go and start coding. It just doesn't happen that way. Do you know what I mean?
It kind of frees up creativity if you think about it. If everyone has easy, affordable access to animation tools or voiceover tools, one person alone could morph their voice into multiple characters and put together an entire movie by themselves. Kind of like how Instagram replaced, say, magazines that showed, extravagant leisure lifestyles. Now you go on the internet for free and you see everybody living the high life.
Yeah, I know it sounds good in principle, but in theory, it sounds like, I mean, that's great. That's
right.
what I would love to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean? But actually, at the end of the day, it's still taking jobs away from people. So how are they going to survive when they can't work because there is no work there for them? Because literally it's 30 seconds of an airplane.
Just to throw in, let me just throw in quickly for the benefit of Deb and viewers. At this part, it's more of a free for all. You don't have to raise your hand. If you want to join in the conversation, just do so at your own leisure. Sorry, continue.
That question is the same thing that happened in the Industrial Revolution and why communism came about. Machines were going to take over and then no one was going to be able to work, which is true, which is why, the box metaphor and Pandora's box too, it comes with all the evils too. And that's just what change is. But it's also, the thing with Pandora's box is once it's out of the box, you can't put it back in.
No, completely. So
that's kind of an internal truth, and it's we can fear it, but fearing it itself, like you should have a healthy fear of it because it does come with all the ills, and if you don't check it, then it's going to control you. If you have healthy, but the fear itself can also lead you to not act accordingly too. You should have a healthy fear of its power, of the power of the tool, because even machinery, if the human doesn't control it, then then it's going to control them. But we have the power to control it, but we need to understand, its potential hazards and not fear it, but also I mean, it's have to accept all the bad, but I think you do have to accept that it's out of the box and it's not going back, and then look forward.
It's
Well,
like the role of farrier or buggy whip maker, or all these things that had to do with horses when the automobiles started arriving, and they would have been looking at this and going, shit, they don't need someone to manage their horse. They don't need someone to shoe their horse.
But now the
But
problem
then-
is there aren't enough barriers for the horses that are around and that are used, because actually that's one of the things that people, oh, now I need to be a mechanic, or I need to do this, or I mean, there is a problem there also. We're going from petrol engines, diesel engines to electric engines, because it's a whole set of new learning and new equipment, which costs an absolute fortune just to be able to keep up with what's happening with the electric vehicles and stuff. So that's another thing. It's great, but it's such an expense, and if you don't have that in the first place, you can't keep up with it. And that I don't know. I mean, I want to see it from every angle. I love it. I think it's amazing. I do think it's a tool, but I see it as something that is actually, being really disruptive to people's lives. So actually that's a problem, and that's where they want to bring in this UBI, which is this universal basic income, because they've already sussed that there are going to be a lot of unemployed people, because they're not going to be able to keep up with the technology. They're not going to be able to keep up with the learning of how to actually be able to use the technology. And those that have got that advanced head start, probably in in the Greeks and the Athenians throughout the ages, those that have got the advanced educational head start of everybody else are still going to be those that have the advanced educational start over everybody else, and there'll still be 40% of the world's population who don't ever have internet access. So how are we improving anything if we're still stuck in that same cycle?
It's hard to see it, but I think going down like the universal basic income is again the collectivist or Marxist mentality that really led to the complacency that ruined their societies.
Well, it's already in place in the UK.
Was Dr. Wright was doing
UBI?
It's already in place in the UK. It's been in place for about 18 months.
And I think that's why Dr. Wright was going off on his tangents about, well, not his tangents, but the side notes about going to the gym and it's uncomfortable and you don't want to do it. But and I wrote down other notes too. During the Industrial Revolution, in the different ways, he talked about the integration of, of like the work ethic, or, what is work. He's talking about how the Pandora's box was the changing the cycle and how it changed what we saw work to be. And I think it happened in the Industrial Revolution too, when the East went towards that collectivist mentality, but it was the integration of the work ethic into the Protestant, belief system is really what built America in that story, in that narrative, and what led to the individual and the competition, and then the flourishing of the society, as opposed to the decay of the society coming out of the Industrial Revolution.
It's almost like UBI happens when we don't care anymore about those we leave behind. So it's important, probably, as we benefit from automation, we still try to find ways to reach out to those in the community who maybe don't understand where they would fit in. And we think of jobs. I mean, there'll be a job to think of jobs for these people. Otherwise, it's going to be socialism.
And it makes me think of the next thing too, is because it is going to displace all those people and they need help. It was one of the things, I don't have a good source on it. I haven't read it myself. It's been a while, but I think I need to look it up. But even the sense of community, like communism is what is common in a commune and community. But when Karl Marx came over to the World Fair to see it, like he remarked on, even though he thought everyone would be left behind and no one would care in these competitive capitalist societies, is why he wanted communism and the collectivist state-run collectivism. But he, when he came over and saw America, like he didn't understand how the small churches and how the small communities took care of each other and looked out for each other. But also that's part of the story and the narrative and the culture of virtue of the good parts of the box that we need to continue once AI disrupts all this stuff. You know, those who do understand it and are doing it, if a society doesn't have the virtue to take care of and help those it displaces, then then the society is not going to flourish either. But expecting the state to take care of people is a road to ruin.
With regards to this UBI, you know, I think you've got to be so careful just not to let people, well, not let people, but not kind of make all this effort that nobody is ever uncomfortable. Because if nobody is ever uncomfortable, that's where you have this kind of stagnation where nobody ever does anything. Because why do anything? I've got my UBI, it comes on Thursday. I don't really need to go and actually improve myself or think of an idea or, you know, do some work. And that's where you really get this kind of cratering of everything good. And I think, you know, to me, it's a really dangerous idea that people who maybe their jobs have been disrupted. There should be some kind of a safety net, but that safety net shouldn't be permanent and it shouldn't be ubiquitous. You know, it should be something that catches them, prepares them for something else, and really re-injects them back into the workforce, rather than just saying, "Oh, you know, sorry, poor boo-boo, it doesn't matter. You can just sit on the couch and watch Netflix for as long as you like," because they will just watch Netflix for the rest of their lives. You know, it'll be like Soma for society, and you know, everyone will just be high on this UBI. They'll never leave the house. They'll never do anything. I think it's super dangerous. And while I agree that yes, these things are disruptive, there's always disruption. This is the nature of progress. The whole idea of progress is that we replace what is old with things that are far better, far more useful. And yes, that costs people their jobs. But part of it is, you know, and it's an indictment on our educational system, is that people aren't really ready for any of this. You know, we have people who really, this is going to affect them very badly. And, you know, this is where that safety net comes in, but the safety net needs to focus on retraining, you know, preparing people to do different things rather than just letting them do nothing. And I think that's the danger.
Right.
A comment, go on, you go first.
Oh, I was just going to say, where jobs are lost, new jobs are created. That's why it's more important for schooling to teach philosophy to some degree and morality, and teach people to understand that they have a purpose, that humanity is great. You know, I heard a really good saying, I follow Human Progress. That's where a lot of my little weekend links come from, where I find out about interesting innovations. Is the Earth has a natural expiration date, but with us here, it can defeat that expiration date. We can extend it. I mean, we have billions of years to make, you know, the Earth last longer than it otherwise would. I mean, we truly are incredible beings. And I feel people are not being taught that anymore. It's like we're a plague on the planet, and it's not that at all. Quite the opposite.
Is that not
The regression to the mean again?
I want to get back to what Leslie just said, but I just want to echo what you first said, which is that about the whole job, you know, loss of job things. New technology, you know, industrial age, Bitcoin, AI and Bitcoin is also linked, by the way, which I want to bring up again later. But basically, new technology and such should flourish in a new economic growth, whereby new jobs, as people have been saying, are created, new businesses are created, new types of jobs are created as well. And what this should do, if people are educated properly to use the technology and such, is create a higher number of jobs. Yes, some people will be not trained. They won't want to train. They might just give up or whatnot. But overall, if it's a positive technology, it will improve the economic growth as a net whole. And if you improve the economic growth as a net whole, and this is something Archie was saying as well, and then you get growth of a nation and wider than a singular nation. And if you have growth of a nation because of new technologies being integrated into a system, and then more jobs and more opportunities appear as well. Where the issue lies is where a country becomes stagnant and stops growing. And I think a lot of the world, we've grown forward a little bit, but in large parts we've become stagnant in the last 60 odd years. And that's where a big issue is because as we become more stagnant, the economic growth nationally and internationally has stalled. And so the rate of jobs haven't been keeping up since like the 60s, I think it is. But if we have scientific improvement and education along those lines, and we're able to create new businesses and new opportunities for people, and then the jobs appear. And even for people who don't want to learn what to do the advanced jobs, the jobs will peter down. Like you'll have people creating the new businesses and then employing people all the way down the chain because they've created a new business which does this new thing, which uses the new technology. And someone who just is unable or doesn't want to learn the higher things will be able to get a job in the lower end of the working rung, so to speak. And quite often, to be fair, in like our day and age, someone who's come out of college and goes straight into works for 10 years, could quite easily get ahead of someone who's gone to university and done this and that, and then come out and starts at the bottom. So
if that was the case, because I want to play devil's advocate, why is there so much homelessness? Because ideally there shouldn't be any homelessness ever anywhere. And why are people eating at food banks? I'm looking at the UK, but this is a worldwide thing. If it was that simple, and this is where
the stagnation, where the society as a whole since the 1960s has become very stagnant, and the advance of technology has slowed. We've had advancements, but if you look to the past of how the rate of technology was improving before, when people were having jobs and living a higher life, it was growing much faster. But the last 60 years, well, 70 years, it's we've had technological advancements, but it's very niche and isn't wider grown, and so the jobs haven't emerged alongside of it.
How much is that?
Sorry, go on.
I want to take it and another question, bring it back to like the gender role too, but and tying it, I'll try to tie it in that too. How much of that is to cultural shifts? Obviously you guys are different in Australia, the UK, and the United States are all slightly different, but even cultural shifts in the United States seem to be becoming more collectivist and less capitalist and less competitive. I would argue that they probably correlate. But to the gender role too, it's interesting that in the Greeks, the story, I think Dr. Wright was trying to say that they kind of contradicted themselves by saying how important the family is, but not holding the role of the female in the raising of the family in very high esteem. And is that happening as one of the problems of the decay of our society, the cultural shift in the decay of the family and family structure, and is it because we didn't hold the role of mothers in high enough esteem? Because to me, I see in my lifetime and what appears before that, the decay is in education. We're more advanced, more technology, but the health is worse. We don't study, we don't have morals and virtue. How much of that is both of the parents going out and working, which is also, to me, biggest thing as a result of the Industrial Revolution. Again, how machines changed what work is, changed what labor is, and the physiological differences in the genders mattered less in production in an industrial world. Enabled that, but then once everyone went, both parents went into the workforce, it seemed like, you know, then one parent's not in the school all the time, not cooking healthy food, you know, everyone's just eating out now and producing. We have this, you know, production mentality, but we're not producing anything quality or value. And how much of that is because, you know, we didn't, now we can see how much we should have valued the role of women and mothers in the past.
This interesting is this what we're saying about, like, when you've got the two parents and they both out at work, then the child like misses out on a lot of love and a lot of that kind of family kind of atmosphere that we should be brought up in. And then this is where mental health comes into it, and then there's neglect, and because you're not getting that attention that you should do as a child, and you're not being able to bond with the parent, especially with a mother. You're not being able to bond with a mother in the way that you should be able to. Do you think, I mean, like, do you think that the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians and Sumerian, is this like literally the same problem, and it's just a different story being told? Because
it's the cycle. And then, from my opinion and how we should, now that we're in a cycle again, we're going through change again, we need to learn from the past, and the story we need to tell now needs to be accurate representation of what is happening and how these technological changes and everything is going to change society. But we still need to emphasize the importance on, like, the virtue and giving the children, you know, the care and attention and love they need, while you know, and we need to value the role of that. I think one of the reasons we don't value the role is because it's not tangible. We just, you know, became obsessed over GDP and production of these services that we can measure, when the you know, it's hard to measure the impact of society that a mother has, because it's not measured in, there's no monetary value saying you bring this home, you bring this amount home, and then you can go purchase all these products with it. It's less tangible. But now, looking back over the last century, when we can see the value of it. Now that,
Let me
now that it's gone.
sorry to interrupt. I just want to ask Deb if Deb has any input. You've been quiet there for the last 45 minutes. Nice to get a new person involved a bit.
I do have some thoughts. Back to what Diddy was saying about the homeless problem. I kind of wonder, though, Diddy, if that goes back to if part of that goes back to the nature of man, not necessarily to a certain period in time, like Joel was saying, of like the 60s or whatever, but how many of those people choose to be homeless, or have chosen different circumstances that have led them to end up there? I think sometimes it's very unfortunate, regardless, however they end up there, but living in the Western United States, where there's a large homeless population, and then tying it back into hope, which we were talking about with Dr. Craig. How do we get people to realize, or are people just, is there a period where we don't have hope anymore? And as a person, we are hopeless. And, you know, I feel like being homeless, having spoken to some homeless people, is kind of indicative of, like, kind of getting to the bottom. How do we help those people? How do mean, I'm just regurgitating my stream of consciousness about the subject, but I don't know, Diddy, what do you think? It's a very complex problem.
Yeah, it is complex. I mean, some of those are veterans, you know, because, you know, they've like complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or they've lost limbs in war, etc. A lot of veterans have ended up homeless. A lot of people have been bankers who have been in London district. So it's a varying difference of people. Some people are drug addicts, some people are just unfortunate, some, you know, I think we need to tackle it before it gets to that point, because it obviously, whatever we've been doing in society hasn't worked, because this is why we've got this. But then when I look back at the Judeo-Christianity, and I look back at the, you know, the Bible and everything, then there was still homelessness then. So I don't see that really society's improved, because we are still making the same mistakes. We're just doing it in a different way with a more different advancement of technology, but literally the same problem still exists. So we need to, well, not always, but somebody needs to tackle this before it even happens. And I don't think UBI is the right thing either. One of the things is it's impossible to live on UBI, and I'll tell you that for a fact. Is what they're giving you is impossible to live on. So how are you supposed to then be able to afford your bills and everything, and just daily living, and actually search for a job and transportation here, there and everywhere, if you can't even afford to live on what they're paying you? So this is a vicious circle that kind of keeps you stuck. It's like a catch-22. Have you ever read the book, Josie, like Catch-22? It's that situation over and over and over again. And like, I don't know. I mean, I think about this quite a lot, to be fair. I think the problem that, you know, I don't know if the WEF or governments are actually, they don't want to change the way that they're functioning anyway. So how is anything going to be different if they don't want to change the way that they function? What they do want to do is they keep wanting to implement new laws, which then restricts society and restricts you as a person even more so. So then you've got less hope. And this is, I had a conversation with a gentleman about prisoners of war who were in concentration camps, and what got them through was the hope that they might get out at Christmas, because they were promised they would get out. Christmas came and they never got out of a concentration camp. So that hope was the only thing keeping them going, was taken away from them. So what do you do at that point? Do you hope that then it's going to happen next year? Do you hope it's going, and that I don't know the answers.
This makes me think back to something Craig had brought up about the size of government. And I think he was saying it was part of the New Deal, I believe, and maybe it was even Woodrow Wilson who had government growing policies. And what happens is people lose hope in believing that they can make an impact. So before the government largesse, it was churches and smaller communities that could make a difference and connect with people directly within their community. But as money and influence now trickles down from the federal level, you know, I tell my children that, you know, the folks in Washington, D.C. try to help, but they don't know us. They don't know the needs of our community. That's why it's more important to keep government small. And that's why republics work. We help the people in our area that have different needs than the people in other areas. When you have things like the New Deal and you have the universal basic income, it's like a one size fits all, and it fits none. You make everyone happy and you make no one happy. You try to accomplish good, you accomplish no good, because it's not a one size fits all. You have to help the individuals to therefore help the whole. It can't be, we're going to help everything and therefore we'll help the individuals. It's no, every individual has their own needs, and on the local level, they can meet those needs, and we have to re-empower the local level. And I think that's what's happened, is just the largesse of government has taken the hope away from the small community to feel impactful. And we have to find ways to take that back and put in the effort to be responsible for the people in our communities.
Yeah, now this is like something that Joel and I had a conversation with a while ago, about kind of CBDCs, in a sense of you've got a big federal government, you've got greed, and within that big government, same here, same everywhere, there is corruption and there's greed. So this is where at least AI and blockchain could actually kind of weed out that corruption and that greed, maybe, because with AI you can just program it to do something and it will do it, and that takes away that human element of wanting to trade on a free stock market when you know what's going to happen, because you've got friends that are going to make sure that you get millions on and do things like that, which actually you probably shouldn't be doing as an individual. So this is where blockchain, Bitcoin, AI can probably work really well together to try and solve some of those issues. And if some of those issues are rectified, then are we on the start to having a better society overall? Don't know.
I think we still need to push it down, government down to the lowest level. I think what Leslie was saying, there's two things, and I agree with what you're saying. Before we switched over to Dr. Wright's paper, I think the next thing we were going to do was kings. I think the whole point of kings is, they evaluated all the kings, and most of them turned out to just be corrupt anyway, because that's who rises to the top, or psychopath or sociopaths. And the few who were not corrupt, were truly benevolent, are just fallible, and they screw up anyway. If you have a centralized control in government, federal government making all the decisions, it's probably going to be corrupt. And even if it's not, even if you get a good, benevolent leader, is going to make mistakes, then those mistakes are going to be, and like you're saying, one size doesn't fit all, especially for I think the larger the society, the more it's going to be. But if you push it, the next thing too is one of the good things about like Europe and the Renaissance and everything was all the individual states making their own decisions, because they're iterations of trial and error, and everyone tries something different and is competing and cooperating and learning from each other. If you only do one thing, you don't learn. If all 50 states in the United States take 50 different approaches, you're going to learn 50 different things, and you're going to be able to see what doesn't work here and there and apply it. So that's
competition.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to add in there that the Craig shares the same view as well. An end goal is smaller governments and less corrupt smaller governments. As governments grow bigger and bigger as they get more corrupt, because then they create more regulation and more laws to curtail the corruption. But as they do that, there's always small parts of whatever they create which ends up being corrupt. But if you have a open, transparent system, which is used more than just moving money around, if you track in the money of government parties, individuals in government, and so on, and also goods and whatnot, and then you basically push aside the need to have regulation because it's all open and transparent anyway. That, as Archie was just saying, that eventually leads, if you start the dominoes down that road, it will eventually lead to a smaller government. But you need people, you still need the humans, and you still need the people. Also, just to add in, automation and AI plays a role in that as well. But yeah, you still need the humans who are willing to step up and say, we're going to use this system. And then people willing to have the morality and such to set up the rules and guidelines of, we're going to use this system and continue using this system, where you can see where our donations are coming from and where our money's going to, rather than the next group of humans saying, we're not going to use this system anymore. We're going to use this completely anonymous system where no one can tell where our money's coming from and what we're doing with it. So behind even Bitcoin and the blockchain and AI systems, you still need the humans, you still need morality, you still need the philosophy of teaching people why it's better to be good than being evil and selfish, why it's better to make a better world. I mean, on the self-serving side, it's better to make a better world for everyone, because then it enriches the world for yourself as well. And you know, that's everyone wants that. Go on, sorry.
That's basic game theory right there, as it applies to economics and just social interactions. I think one of the ways we've gone away from capitalism is doing the narrative that, you know, capitalism is synonymous with greed, but greed is you know, one of the ills in Pandora's box. It's, you know, one of the 7 deadly sins. It's not you know, in communist society, we think they're benevolent, but those people are susceptible to greed just as much as anything else. And a good capitalist who understands game theory knows that if he conducts himself in a way that's unvirtuous, he has to go back to the marketplace the next day and interact with those same people. And the laws of nature are gonna, you know, punish him or her, and is what actually checks that. And free markets check those vices, you know, the natural laws do it, and that's how people will interact. I don't know.
I mean, well, I will say that at the moment, the systems that we use, whereas I agree with Archie, I would say the systems that we currently use is a bit of a 50-50, that people can be utter bastards, and as you were saying earlier, sociopaths and maniacs, and still rise to the top, because the systems we use allow for some of them to get away with it. Whereas the systems we will end up building will, if we do it right, and this is the Pandora's box thing back again with the whole cryptocurrency and Pandora's box, if we do it right, because we're the blooming I forgot what it's called now, the vanguard, the front runners. If we do it right, and then we'll have the systems for ourselves and for future generations. So yeah, we're very much at the vanguard. BSV is hope out of Pandora's box, and I know there's despair. As Craig was saying, it's a double-edged sword, and you know, people come into our space and they go, "Oh, you know, we're not number one," and all of that lot. And
are we viewing hope as a positive?
Yes, I view it as a positive, but I also see it as a one side of a two-sided.
It's a dangerous. It's a two-sided. It's a double-edged blade.
I had a conversation with someone in the random channel of the ICU kind of about this, and I was thinking about hope too. It was just that, you know, the BRICS countries coming up with their own currency and stuff, and you know, I argued, you know, really the printing of dollars isn't good for anybody, especially the average American either. And if, you know, when it comes, you know, it's going to be hard. It's going to be like going back to the gym. It's going to suck, but it's going to be good for us. And that just kind of ended with, hopefully it happens sooner and later, that we strip the Band-Aid off and we just do it. But he had a quote, something along the lines of, you know, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, something like that. But and it just made me think of the hope thing. And he's right. The timing, even if we know that this protocol works, if you look at it and you know it, and like it's out of it is Pandora. The Bitcoin protocol is the most efficient thing. It is the next evolution in technology, if you see it. But the whole thing is the timing, and then the hope. You know, I've been watching it for 5 years, and it's exhausting waiting for it to happen. And that's what the guy said. Like, you know, hey, you know, it could take. Who knows how long it can take? And I think we've seen people in the space burn out. And then you see that with, losing hope. So the lesson we take too, and we apply it today, is, there's no telling how long this is going to take. It might not even happen in our lifetimes. So if we keep hoping tomorrow, Christmas comes and the rest of the cryptos crash and people finally realize which one scales and which one works, we have to keep the hope that it's going to work. But if we hope it's going to happen tomorrow, we're just going to be disappointed until we become hopeless.
Yeah, you just can't. You've got to just set aside any thought in your head of knowing that people are going to. I thought in 2018 people would realize in 2019. In 2019, I thought 2020. Now I'm like, I don't know. The burnout is real. I mean, I can't tell you how close I have sailed to the wind of burnout, of just being, I mean, right there, right now. Like, I have so many projects on my plate, and it is fucking hard to get motivated to get up and do all of this work, especially knowing that a lot of them, I don't get paid. Like, I'm not making any money right now. That's the hardest thing, is to know that, yes, there is a reward at the end, but when is that end? You just got to keep going and know that there is a final destination. And, maybe I do turn into a burned out husk. Whatever. At least I tried.
That's why pride is a sin as well. I mean, think of pride as the good side of it, but really it's one of the 7 deadly sins, because people can't swallow it when it needs to, and then that's why they fall so hard when people can't admit they're wrong.
Zeus swallowing a Metis who he turned into a fly. I mean, what is that all about, really?
I think 2 things. One, what Dr. Wright said in the class, of how life happens first, and then we build the story to try to understand it. That's how we wrestle with God, because our lives, that is us trying to understand nature and understand God and act in accordance with God and nature's laws, is that struggle as the world changes around us and we try to learn. But he also used the analogy in modern day, like, it's the only way we learn. Like, when children learn concepts or learn the way the world works, they don't learn through these literal explanations. They learn from, giant yellow talking birds or purple dinosaurs, what morals and how to act through story. And it's the same thing he put in here. The superhero thing is all of our lives. Why the hero's journey is all stories we can apply to our lives, and it's through story that we learn complex concepts. And then that's why the mythologies were the way they are, and it hasn't changed. But the way he talked about Superman or Batman in here is the same thing.
It's always a hero,
because there's an abstract truth in those stories that we can take away and understand.
It's
take away the truths from the stories of the past too, of these cycles and evolutions. It's the same thing of let me make one point. If we look at Bitcoin and how long it's going to take, if we're realistic about it, and hope should be grounded in reality, this is a revolutionary thing. It's going to require paradigm shifts in the way we view the world and a change of the story. I mean, it's totally unrealistic for us to not expect this to take decades.
2 things to quickly add in. With the expectation and the hope and the waiting, with Bitcoin, we do have a kind of timer, which is for halvings. So either this shit works by, I'm going to say 2024 is the next halving, and everything else, unless they pump the shit out of BTC with tethers to, like, I think it was 90 or 100,000 they need.
Yeah, it's at 30.
They're issuing new tethers weekly now.
Right. Okay. Well, they've got to hit around 90 or 100,000, I think it is. by next April. Is it April or May? Around then. Either they do that or they're in trouble, and then they've got to keep that price up with people like Craig dumping on them. So either they do that or they're going to be in trouble. But I don't think BSV is going to suddenly magically go away and take the lead by then either. So I mean, I'm a bit like Brendan there, where I've waited and I've waited, and now I'm a bit more like, it's going to happen, but I'm not going to, you know.
It's also it's never going to be $100,000, like or equivalent value to 100,000 today. Yeah.
But I look at the halving like Christmas for the POWs or the internment camps. Like the next halving is like a timeline for me. It's like that's when it's gonna change. But I said that with the last halving, so I'm still hopeful for that day, but it's tempered, and if it, you know, if everyone doesn't see it and come mid 2024.
The halvening is a cliff, and BTC is well over the cliff from the previous halvening. Like I find it hard to believe that there's a lot of profit in BTC mining at the moment, and the next halvening is just, you know, the bloodbath that we saw last time is just going to continue. And, you know, a big problem we have is that there's a big stagnation in the development of mining systems. You know, we have so much more intelligence that we need to imbue into the, not just the node client, but the proof of work machines, the actual hashes, and they're not being designed the way they need to be designed. And this is a real, it's not so much a risk, because it just means that until somebody comes up with the right design, everybody is inefficient. But somebody will design the more efficient machine, the more efficient machine that works in the right way, and they will become the next leader. And so that's interesting to watch and in some ways be a part of. So, you know, we've got a patent on next generation mining. We're doing some work with a university here in Australia. It's actually getting reasonably exciting. So, yeah, there's a lot that has to happen over the next 10 years, and really, then we're just beginning. You know, I think what we'll see is within 10 years we'll be in a position where some of these big use cases, the ones where all of a sudden we've got hundreds of millions of people being onboarded all at once, and the network can handle it, is probably 5 to 10 years. You know, we can't do CBDC right now, and we'd be stupid to try and go out and say that we can, because we just don't have the capacity on the network. You know, the node client isn't robust enough. You know, we get all excited about 50 million transactions in a day. Well, here's some news. We could do 50 million transactions in a day 3 years ago. I did 5 million transactions in 2 hours in 2020. So there's nothing special about 50 million in a day. It's actually a pretty big indictment of the development of the node client, that we're still stuck where we were 3 years ago. So yeah, at the moment, it's 5 to 10 years before we'll actually be in a position to start admitting some of the big use cases to the network. We actually have to fend. I mean, we don't really have to fend them off, because none of them are even looking at BSV, but there'll come a point where they'll start to be like, oh, we want to do this. And we may have to turn them away because we can't actually handle the volume of transactions that they're going to generate.
I just want to then bring up another point which you were just discussing a minute ago, Diddy and Archie, about the stories, the metaphors from the Greeks and the such. As Terry Pratchett puts it, there are lies to children and lies to adults. And the lies to children are the stories you tell children. So like they learn, like, don't put your hand in fire.
Yeah.
Or, you know, don't you know, yeah, silly little things and stuff. So they learn, and then eventually as they get older, they learn the lies to adults, and then lies to adults are the lies we tell other adults, so they learn. And then it's not until you get past the lies to adults that you actually learn the truth with stuff. And the stories, the way of passing down stories from generations to generations before people could write and everyone had books, was basically lies to adults and lies to children, a combination, and stories got passed along like that. Storytellers.
It's what
So, yeah.
Dr. Wright was saying too, with Socrates didn't want to write things down, but once written language was out of the box, there's no putting it in, and he's true. Like since when I was a kid, I remember I had tons of phone numbers memorized. I don't remember any phone number, but it's still better, and it's better recording for memetics is passing down knowledge through generations, and we do it using language, but storytelling about capacity is only so much. That's why stories are told in the way they're told. They have to be interesting, and they have to be, you have to remember them.
It's interesting. If we lost electricity tomorrow, 99% of all content just is just gone. You know, and you go back and say, well, maybe we did have advanced civilizations. Well, maybe it was a similar thing. Maybe it was all somehow digital, or some other version of digital where it was ephemeral, where you needed a certain level of technology to be able to actually read and interpret the data, and we don't have it anymore.
That's right.
I have a question. Quick question, right? So we just discussed like lies to adults, lies to children, and making up stories to pass information. And as Brendan just says, we have so much of it just in electronic format now. What can anyone think of any stories that we've made in the last 50 years that describes our society now? As Brendan said, if electricity disappeared, what other stories that we would tell to our children and grandchildren to tell them of the existence today? I mean, I can't think of any, but
Of electricity.
Yeah, and planes and go on.
Like flying machines were like the Egyptians and the Peruvians. They did have gliders. They could fly. So this is something that I find quite amusing, that people think that we didn't fly until the Wright brothers. No, because they had gliders, and they've found diagrams and they've rebuilt them, and yes, they flew. So that's something that I find quite amusing in that sense. And you're saying about like, I mean, we've still got the stone monuments, you know, so Stonehenge, we could tell them about things like that. There are stars, alignments and things, you know, the pyramids, they're always going to be there. Things that were built in stone, megalithic monuments, are still going to be there. This is why I always wonder, well, look, there was a flood 12,500 years ago. How the hell do we know that there wasn't computers then? There is that computer, that really old computer that was found at the bottom of the ocean. It's really intricate. It reads like it's used for navigation. It's got the stars, you know, the universe. It's got time on it. It's really intricate, and it's, I don't know, 1,000 years old. Well, however old it is, you'd have to go and look it up. But how do we know? Because this sort of stuff would erode and corrode and just turn into rust. There's 1.2 million years worth of the Earth's history disappeared because glaciers just churned the whole planet apart. There's an ocean under the ocean. We don't know anything about our own planet. Seriously. So this is why I find history fascinating, is because we don't know any of this stuff. All we do know, like you say, the stories that have been told and then written down. Papyrus disappears, paper gets burnt, but stone doesn't. And that's why stone is so important. And like, you know, Aboriginal cave drawings. How do you know they didn't have more advanced technology, but there are some amazing artists out there? You know, I mean, we found a 30,000-year-old skeleton in Egypt, and they did a 3D model of it. Released it a couple of weeks ago. And like, there's no difference from that human skeleton then 30,000 years ago to today. So, yeah, why do we think that the timeline that we've been taught is our actual real timeline?
No, it's fake. It's not real. it's just assumptions. It's a timeline of assumptions, and those assumptions keep getting broken. And you know, I think that if there was a previous advanced technological society, there will be evidence of that. And I think there are a few places that I already know of where we could go and look. And so obviously, you know, there's all the stories about the Hall of Records under the Giza Plateau.
Yeah.
There's also, I don't know if any of you guys have seen that Graham Hancock show on Netflix. There's that one place in Indonesia where they had built like this thing on the top of a mountain. And I was looking at it and they were like, oh, you know, it's some kind of temple or grave. No, it's a fucking bunker. That's like a super armored bunker sitting under, you know, 100 meters of soil. We need to get down in there and see what's in there, because if there is any leftover relics of this high technology that they might have had, that's where it will be, is in a bunker.
I look at the architecture as well, right? The architecture is so intricate and beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And what we're doing now is just square boxes of concrete. This is where I feel like we've not advanced. We've actually gone back.
We've regressed.
Yeah.
We've gone cookie cutter, flat pack.
Yeah,
pack mega buildings.
Angkor Wat is a perfect example, you know, and how many years did it take for the jungle to grow over that structure? How many like structures are literally buried underneath rainforest? How many pyramids are buried under the sand in Egypt? There are shed loads of them. So I completely that's where I'm at. Yeah.
All across the Sahara, there's stuff that's kind of, it pops up and then a dune comes over and covers it again.
There's a lady that re-terraformed part of the Gobi Desert, like millions of acres, you know, in the last 20 years or so, millions of acres. So, you know, why are we so stuck in this, like, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, we've got climate issues? Well, not really. There shouldn't be shortages of food, there shouldn't be any issues.
It's because it's the stories we need. Our lives need purpose and foundation, and we have to have stories. And once we dig these things up and we see them, then it's going to shift and we're going to make new stories about them. But those aren't going to be true either. And it's why Socrates said, the only thing I know is that I know nothing, or something along those lines, is because everything, you know, we know is built on a premise. If you follow the logic, if you, like a child, ask why? If you follow the logic back, it's going to be taken at some sort of, you know, fundamental principle or some premise that every logical question from that is built on, and it's confined to the dimensions of time and space. But you can't even do that. What came before that? What's smaller than an atom, or what's smaller than a subatomic particle? You know, what's on the other side of the universe? The dimensions of time and space that we confine ourselves to, you know, they can't be, you know, it's paradoxical.
I suppose at one point we were convinced
that is the definition of God, is understanding that and accepting, like, no, we don't really know. Nothing can be empirically proven. There's always, you find these pyramids, and how did they do it? Well, what came before that? Well, what came before that? But if you do that for logical, you're going to put yourself in a self-referential loop and go crazy. So you have to, in order to interact with the world, you have to accept certain premises, or, you know, the laws of God that, you know, I don't really know anything time and space, but if I jump off this cliff, I'm probably not going to work out well for me. So I'm going to go and make decisions and go through life based on these objective, what I think to be objective truths, even though if you just keep asking the question, you know, at some point you're going to have to, everything has to be taken on faith at a starting point.
I just want to add in, there are sites in South America, old like ruins and such, where they've got drill holes. I think Graham Hancock talks about some of these, where they have drill holes in these massive blocks, which are perfect drill holes.
Yeah.
And these are like thousands of years old. And it's like,
it's the same on the Giza Plateau.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's it would. I had this discussion once with someone, and I was saying how it will only take one generation of after like a nuclear war or something, or a massive solar flare which wipes out electricity for a bit. One generation to forget most of everything. Two generations to literally forget everything, and 3 generations everything's grown over, and everyone's beating.
Exactly. I mean, interesting. I was just going to chuck in about light. Okay, so for years and years we thought nothing was faster than the speed of light, but CERN proved a couple of a couple of years ago, a year ago, that actually there is something faster than the speed of light. Now, I know that Michael Tellinger has been saying this for a long time, but CERN actually proved it a while ago, that there is something that is faster than the speed of light. I just don't know what the name is at the minute, but you can find that out. But yeah. But you should watch the Cosmic Summit, because they've got a live stream coming in June. So you're going to get like literally all of these ancient history, like obsessed people all together in the same room. So you're going to get Graham Hancock, you're going to get Randall Carlson, you're going to get Jimmy, you're going to get Joanna, you're going to get Ben, Uncharted X. You're going to get all of these people, like them all in the same room, all at the same time, talking about all of this stuff. I think it's $50 for an online ticket. But so I would highly recommend watching that if you're into that kind of stuff. Anyway,
that's why I love doing these philosophy classes, because it's a real different
you
thing
can get really
to
deep.
Discuss.
Yeah.
And it comes back, really, at the end of the day, it does come back to sort of humanity, really, and society, and how everything is formed, and how we're going to save the world in that respect, or at least save the knowledge for future generations, so that it's attainable for them. It's the Edgar Cayce as well that we talked about with Hall of Records, wasn't it? Was it Edgar Cayce?
Yeah. I believe he's one of the people who's spoken about it.
There is a chamber underneath the Sphinx's paw. They found that a while ago, and there are tunnels.
They won't let anyone in it.
No.
Yeah,
unless you've got a lot of money, maybe. Well, it'll be proven.
I'm sure they've been in there. Probably don't know what they're looking at.
In some of the pyramids, there's those giant tombs, the sarcophagi. No, they're not sarcophagi. They're
they don't know what they are.
The Serapeum.
They go, it's a sarcophagus.
The giant.
It's like they found that black box which had like the 3 dead bodies and liquid in it, and it was like, I actually think they've completely misinterpreted what happened there. I think that was an old relic. And then 3 people have done something bad, and their punishment was that they were put in there and it was filled with water up to their necks, and the lid was put on, and then they died.
They just turned to like goo.
Yeah, and they turned to goop. And the goop that they poured out was what was left of those people. And then they've cooked up this story that, it was a tomb of these 3 people and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, actually, I don't see that at all. It's far too big. And probably the people who put those people in there had no idea what it was for either. So
that'd be a horrible way to die as well, wouldn't it?
It'd be a terrible way to. Did anyone in here read in Lives? So Plutarch's Lives, the very last one. I think is it Mithridates or Mithridates? They had this torture called boats. Man, and so what they would do, if you pissed the king off, they would essentially create a little boat that was as big as your body, and they would nail you inside of it. And so you were sealed up to your neck, and so you couldn't move your arms or legs. And then only your head was exposed, and they would force feed you with honey so that you didn't die. And essentially, it was the corruption of the rest of your body from being eaten by flies and stuff that would kill you. And so it like goes into this extraordinary detail of this torture. And this one guy who it took 18 days for him to die of this method of torture.
It's kind of like burying people in sand pits, isn't it? Burying people in the sand as well. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, a little bit. I think you would die more quickly in the sand.
Sand, yeah.
Like that. This is quite an exquisite form of torture. And I assume they called it boats because there would be multiple people in these boats at any one time, all kind of hanging out in the middle of the harbor. Ugh.
This is what gets me though. It's like why do people worship royals when really the royals are the same lineage and the same mindset of the people that were doing all these torturous things? I mean, even back in the medieval times in the UK, the hideous things.
They put people in cages and hang them off the wall of the castle. And
I have this old big. I read this paper once and I thought on it, and I've thought a theory on it a bit more. It's all to do with God and afterlife. People want an afterlife, and they're scared of death. And there's certain things which science is not allowed to look at, like how we were not allowed to look at dead bodies and such for ages, and medical people had to, pay people to get dead bodies for them to look at. And the same things still up to today, we're not allowed to look at past life. That's just like, no, that's the realms of the gods. You're not allowed to look at that. No, it's God. But I think slowly we will get there. But anyway, point is that all the books and all the past, all the church, the preachings is that royal families are chosen by God, and they are on their own separate type of cloud or whatever. And if you piss off a royal family, you're pissing off God. Therefore, you're not going to go to heaven, and you're not going to have an afterlife and all of that. So you have to do whatever the royal family says to be in the good graces of God. And a lot of people are brought up, I want to say indoctrinated, but they're just brought up in this belief system. People need faith, as Archie said. Some people, you need faith in something. I think not everyone, but a lot of people, they're brought up in that mindset, and they think they have to think that way. They have to do that not because of the royal family, but because of their belief in the afterlife and God. The royal family is just a middle figure that they've taught must exist and must be there, must be the middle figure. Because I think as well, another part of the thing is like people don't listen to their inner voice, and they don't listen to, they don't think, everyone can touch a bit of God. They think, I can't do that, so therefore someone else must touch God for me. They don't like to take responsibility for their own actions and such, and they push it off to other people. And by doing that, they end up putting that person on a pedestal, the royal family or whichever royal figure, or a priest or something, on a pedestal. When I don't think they should take responsibility for their own actions and whatnot. I do believe there's a place for God. I do believe there's a place for religion for people who need it, but I don't essentially agree with all religious teachings, put it that way.
Most of them are fraudulent anyway, aren't they? We know that for a fact that the Catholic Church has basically taken out things that they didn't want people to know about, put things in they did want people to know about, and indoctrinated it basically so that you are controlled by their narrative. So for example, like the Book of Thomas or the Book of Judas or the Book of Mary Magdalene, like Jesus actually, I think it's Judas, he tells Judas that actually God is within you. We are all gods, and God is light. So, and we are all gods of light, because that is what God is actually. It's not one, it's not a human, it's not a deity, it's literally light, and we're all forms of light, just slowed down into matter kind of thing. So we're all gods of light trying to forget that we're God kind of thing.
The responsibility thing is a good point too. And that's one of the things I think the collectivist mentality works so well is, it's a lot easier to just say the government's going to take care of me. I mean, so much less stressful and anxiety inducing.
Government is going to eat you for breakfast, pal.
It's not
but also what you guys are describing is just dogma. It's where the self-proclaimed expert tries to say what the doctrine is, whether it be any religion or science. You know, hey, I'm the interpreter of this, and what I say is the way it is. But that's dogma, as opposed to the individual believing, hey, you know, it's my job to interpret the word or the study or anything else. And that's how corruption comes. That's why so many people don't like religion, or why, you know, the scientific institutions today are losing credibility because they've become so dogmatic. And it's also, I don't know if any other definitions of religion, but my personal definition I'm coming up with is to differentiate between a cult and a religion. You know, what is a religion or what's a cult? You know, it's, you know, a belief system that, you know, what you believe in, it also unifies a people. The difference between a religion and a cult, to me, or even culture, is that religions stand the test of time. So they both have stories that tell belief systems and, you know, ideas and whatever, but cults and die quick and cultures die with the fall of the societies. The stories in religions becomes religion if the story survives the rise and fall of, you know, epochs or epics or whatever. So, you know, Christianity was there, the stories were there, you know, when the Romans killed Christ 500 years later, you know, Constantine made Rome Christian and Rome fell, and then the Arabs came and then the Middle Ages, the British Empire came and went, and the stories of Christianity are still here today. And after this postmodernists come and go, the stories of Christianity will still be here. And that's what differentiates religion from, you know, just other belief systems, is that they stand the test of time. They stand the test of time is when you actually dig into the stories like we do in philosophy class or theologically, and you abstract the truths, because the truths of the stories are always going to apply across time. I mean, we live in a different world today technologically, but the human aspects are the same today as they were 1,000 years ago or before, and they will be tomorrow. And the truths are going to be a medium that stays the same as everything else changes around it.
The morals, the good morals that it tries to teach us. Yeah. All right, everyone. I think we should end this around on this point. That was a good thing to end it on. Thank you, Archie. Unless anyone has any last comments to add. It's all right.
No,
it's all right to be quiet.
Not this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Deb.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I'm
likewise.
glad you joined. Yeah, okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Continued discussion in the Slack. As always, poke Brendan or Diddy if you have questions or stuff. And thank you, everyone. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
good day.
Bye, everyone. Thanks a
Bye.
lot.